So My Hero Academia is definitely taking its time with this mock battle system, this little tournament style that I am really enjoying. Last week, incredible brainwashing, seeing how that could be used in a heroic way. But going back to the roots of My Hero Academia, and that's my boy Tokoyami. I've loved him since the beginning. If you would have asked me back in the season 1, 2, 3 era, this would be up there for one of my top picks for best ability. I love the idea of Dark Shadow. I think it's so cool to have almost like a JoJo style stand that fights alongside you, kind of warped in shadow as you have a bird looking creature, right? It's so interesting to see that. Definitely has been pushed to the sidelines more in recent arcs, but to have him really essentially take flight after his training with Hawks and to see what he's now able to do, this is what he's never been able to do given how his ability works. But to actually see it come to fruition in this episode really brought a giant grin to my face. I think when you look at abilities at face value, it's very easy to take them as this is how they work, and you can see the general progression. If you're looking at a shadow-like creature that can be summoned to fight, yeah, you think, okay, it could probably extend longer, it might be able to get stronger, the shadows will increase. But if we're saying that, we don't believe he can fly because of it, because, well, the sun would burn him alive, how the floating mechanics work, it just doesn't make sense, right? We're like, okay, we just don't assume it will happen. But then when you have characters like Hawks, who really will take someone under their wing, not because they want to train the next generation, but because they're generally curious about what happened and just to see what's going to occur, see if they can keep up. But also because we're kind of the same birds, right? We're birds of the same feather. You just want to help those who clearly are holding themselves back. And I guess in hindsight, Tokoyami's biggest hurdle, minus sunlight and brightness, would without a doubt be his limitation to being on the ground. And to see him actually fly after seemingly they got destroyed. Okay, we are fighting an opponent who can absorb himself into any place that's dark that can be moved around, and he can kind of just capture a person and go through this maze like a roller coaster to victory. And then in comes our boy, who uses his cloak pretty much like a cape in order to block the sunlight as Dark Shadow wraps himself around while his hands are still free, and it creates a way for him to actually fly. When I saw that, I remembered why I loved this ability so quickly early on into the show. The character design for Tokoyami is badass. I always thought that. I thought a Dark Shadow bird is just really cool to me. And the ability, it just seems like it's something that could be some of the more devastating abilities if utilized correctly. And to now see him have the ability to take flight, he's not only a pretty good fighter, but he also has the ability to aid people in support, which is really cool. We see it with the whole naval laser, having him fly around as he's then lighting up all the pipes, which basically makes his ability useless. And you think they've kind of got the jump on these kids. I think My Hero Academia definitely knows that this is an arc that could have easily felt like it was what people would call filler, right? It's like, oh, not enough big things are happening. We're not fighting the League of Villains, this or that. But I really feel like, even if maybe you walk into an episode, and I had it actually happen in this week's episode, I was like, okay, it's a bit slower. Maybe these aren't all my favorite characters, but, I'll give it the benefit of the doubt. We'll see where it goes. And by the middle portion, when the battle really started going, I remembered why this is an arc that's so important. Because we have such a large cast of characters, and not everyone will be able to have the same amount of spotlight as someone like Deku, as someone like Todoroki, right? So what we have to do is we have to show that with all the training they've done, and I mean, they give us some flashback, they rehash what we've experienced over the past couple of seasons, and it's been a hell of a lot. Ever since, the hero killer stuff, everything went haywire. It's gotten darker, it's gotten more intense, but clearly every character has improved, and it's good to see the difference. I feel like generally what happens is you get time skips and you just see everyone in a new costume and they have all these new abilities. And while that's not necessarily a bad thing, I think where these characters are, it's important to show their progression. And what better way than to have them all fight each other and see where they can improve and what they did right and what they did wrong. You see it, we get a little quick rehash and recap of what happened on both sides. We have someone like Eraserhead being stern, but is saying this is what you did right, but this is where you need to improve. Giving that mentorship, where then you have Mr. Vlad, who's just, he's kind of in a league of his own. He's just like, if you would have worked as a team, you would have done better. But still, it's important to be able to take those mistakes and learn from them. And I'm glad to see an episode like this that once again highlighted how you can combine almost any character with another in this cast and create a fun battle. If you would have told me last week that we would have an interesting way to take Dark Shadow and a laser beam that comes from the stomach, I would say that doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, maybe he could shield him, like, as he shoots, but I mean, I had no idea this man could fly at this point, so it just doesn't make sense. But seeing how they've both improved, it's really cool to see all the new technological feats that they've kind of accomplished at this point. My Hero is definitely a show that I feel like it's taking it slow in a certain sense, but it's also very fast-paced in another. It's slow in the sense that the first half of these episodes are generally just characters talking, they're walking, they're planning, they're preparing, right? It's important stuff, but that could be dry and boring to some people. But then on the flip side, when you think about it, it's nice to have those competitions, those rivalries. When you have a character who's essentially pure darkness going up against another character of pure darkness, it makes total sense. Or the whole idea that certain people put these two in the same category, so it's like, oh, I want to prove that I'm actually better than you. It's a nice little kind of like healthy rivalries that don't go overboard, but granted, sometimes it's hard to tell if someone's being a little too serious when their costume does feel like something from the League of Villains. It's one thing to have an ability that controls minds, you can see where that could go kind of evil. It's another when you see just dark, I'm like, what in the actual hell? But it's a really cool ability. I was really happy to see something like that go up against Tokoyami and the struggles that come with it. But I mean, the idea that they were so well coordinated that if light happens, they had a plan B ready and it's all these mushrooms growing, they're definitely a force to be reckoned with. And it'll be interesting to see if Tokoyami's group is even going to survive, because it doesn't feel like this is one of those shows right now that just because the main class is strong, just because the main cast has gone up against some crazy things, the other classes also had time to really study and improve, where certain areas that, you know, when you're fighting League of Villains, you don't really have that classroom time. And sometimes that classroom time might be able to make you better in certain cases, right? So it's pretty cool. But then on the flip side, like I said, at other times it's very fast paced, and that's all the battles and things like that. And I'm happy that they're not just doing what we've seen My Hero Academia do before, where you have, I don't know, 6 battles, right? And in the span of, say, 2 to 3 episodes, all of those take place. A Deku battle gets a lot of focus, but then maybe a Tokoyami battle, it gets 2 seconds to 2 minutes, right? They just speed by it, they rehash, oh, victory, loser, victory, loser. They did that before in the show. So the fact that they're actually dedicating an episode to each of these battles, seemingly, I think is a really good system to use. And the My Hero Academia story has a lot to offer, so it's not like they're stretching their content thin. There's a lot of content still left to adapt, but it's nice that they know that this is something that people want to see, not only just for the action, but to see how they improved and how the rivalries have grown over the season. I mean, I've been watching My Hero Academia since it first started up in season 1, and every season I've truly felt like it's gotten progressively better. And while sure, we haven't seen anything truly crazy yet in terms of the main plot, I still think that this is a season that's setting itself up for greatness. You have all the stuff with Endeavor and Hawks and all that, but the actual ideas for the students, because this show has gotten progressively darker ever since the Hero Killer, so you know it's going to get darker again with them, so it's good to show them where they can improve before, I don't know, another League of Villains explodes into the school and chaos unfolds, or another character dies, or something like that, right? It's just, there's a lot of ways for this to go crazy, and I'm glad that they are taking their time right now. As someone who's a big Tokoyami fan and Dark Shadow fan, this was basically everything I wanted. This was the fan service I needed. But it's cool to see all the other characters take flight, and just the idea of mushrooms, you would think, how could that be very useful? But if she can actually plant them on other characters, that could be pretty devastating. I don't know, the way they can make powers that I would think would be so boring actually engaging is a pretty cool ability. But My Hero Academia has definitely found a way to do so with grace. Let me know your thoughts and feelings on Tokoyami's new ability and how he's kind of utilizing Dark Shadow, and what do you think of the battle and like your favorite point of it? Granted, it was pretty much all based on one person for this battle, that they were fighting a character of darkness, but still, there was a plan in the background there, which I thought was pretty cool. Let me know your feelings down below. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, share your support, and hit that subscribe button if you're happy new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.